All right, welcome everyone to today's webinar, Where Do You Get Your Information? A Survey of Occupational Safety and Health Practitioners. My name is Jessica Bunting, and as always, I'm the CPWR host and tech support for this event. So before we get started, I'm just going to go over a few quick things. First, if you have any technical problems with either the WebEx webinar system or the phone system, please contact me through your chat box or at jbunting@cpwr.com. That's jbunting@cpwr.com, or you can just respond to any of the WebEx emails. If you're listening to the audio portion of the event through your computer and experience any lag or difficulty hearing the speakers, we recommend that you use your phone to call in for improved sound quality. You can find that information and switch your connection either on your event info tab to the left of the presentation or by clicking on the little phone icon beneath the list of participants or speakers. We will take some time at the end of the presentation to answer questions. Since your phones and microphones are muted through the system, you can enter a question in the chat box or in the Q&A box at any time, and I will read the questions out loud at the end. And finally, today's webinar will be recorded, so if you're interested in reviewing or sharing the information with colleagues, I will make that available to everyone via email after the event. Our presenter today is Clayton Sinyai, Communications Research Manager at CPWR, and he'll be sharing the results from a survey we conducted in 2015, asking construction industry safety practitioners what sources they relied on for occupational safety and health information. And with that, I will hand it over to Clayton.
All right, thank you. This is Clayton Sinyai, Communications Research Manager here at CPWR. Thanks for joining us today. Am I broadcasting, Jessica?
Yep.
Okay, great. Let me begin with a little background information before I jump into the findings that'll make sure you can understand why we did the survey and how we did the survey. CPWR serves as the National Construction Center under a cooperative agreement with NIOSH. One thing we do is lead a team of researchers doing original research in construction health and safety. However, we also work to get that research into practice in the field. That means publishing and distributing handouts, brochures, DVDs, and other training aids aimed at safety professionals and at trades workers. Another branch of our organization supports OSHA outreach training efforts by the Joint Labor Management Apprenticeship programs that are very common in the union sector construction world. As a result of all these activities, over the years, we've built a contact database of more than 5,000 opinion leaders across the building industry, a list that includes people from government, from business, from labor, from colleges and universities, and the trade press, and a lot of other places. However, when we went through our records, we found that most of the requests we received for our materials and products came from two categories within that contact list. The first category was safety staff who worked for construction contractors. These are people like the safety directors at construction contracting firms, field safety personnel, and even safety consultants that worked for construction contractors. The other group was apprenticeship trainers and staff. We have hundreds of contacts on our list. We're responsible for OSHA 10, OSHA 30 outreach training, other construction safety and health training for workers in their trade, and they were ordering a lot of products from us. These two groups, and I'm going to loosely call them occupational safety and health practitioners, were only about 25% of our contact list, but they generated 75% of our orders for materials and products. So we did this survey to find out more about them and about their needs. We wanted to know what magazines and e-newsletters that they read for information on construction, occupational safety, and health. What websites did they visit? What social media did they use for their work? Now today, you can do a Google search and turn up thousands of different websites and newsletters and blogs and listservs from people promising to provide construction safety and health information. So we couldn't do an exhaustive list of all the potential sources out there. This survey could test only one or two leading publications representing each type of source. Fortunately, we didn't have to just choose them out of a hat. We had some reliable data sources already that we could use to identify some representative sources for our survey. First, most of the for-profit publications out there that are working in this space provide third-party audited circulation reports. These audited circulation reports are for advertisers mainly, but they were useful for us too because they contained not only numbers of subscribers, but a lot of detailed demographic information and sometimes digital media metrics as well. Secondly, a lot of the sources operate in digital media that have visible metrics. You can look at anyone's Twitter feed and see how many followers they like, or we can look at Facebook posts and see how often they're liked or shared or commented on. And finally, we were able to identify a number of different surveys that people had conducted in the past that were related to what we were looking at, that the findings were very helpful. So using these as a starting point, we designed a survey to find out where people were getting their information, and we revised it with a round of pilot testing. In our database, we had contact information for 1,409 contacts in these two target categories. A little more than half of them were construction safety professionals working for construction contractors, the safety directors and safety consultants I spoke of earlier, and the remainder were apprenticeship instructors or staff at the apprenticeship and training programs, ones who had responsibilities of some kind for construction safety and health training. For shorthand, I'm sometimes going to refer to these groups as the business group and the labor group. But at any rate, the group was, we got 319 responses for a pretty good 22% response rate. 171 of the responses came from the business side, and that's the private sector safety professionals, and 148 from the labor respondents, the apprenticeship instructors and staff and folks in that category. The first question we asked the respondents was about subscriptions. What information sources were so important to them that they took out a subscription to them? Did academic journals make the cut? Were they more likely to read trade magazines that focused on safety and health, or trade magazines that focused on the construction industry? Were there particular e-newsletters that were especially important to them? We identified 9 leading publications in a variety of different categories and asked respondents if they subscribed to these. And now, with the exception of the academic journals, these were all very large circulation publications with 70,000 subscribers or more. When we tallied the responses, some things jumped out at us. The first was that the OSHA Quick Takes, OSHA's bi-monthly electronic newsletter, was far and away the biggest source for this audience. A majority of the respondents, almost 60%, reported that they subscribed to the OSHA Quick Takes newsletter. Professional Safety also posted very strong numbers. This is the journal that's published by the American Society of Safety Engineers, ASSE, and aimed at practitioners. This probably indicates that among our membership, or among the population we survey, there's very high rates of ASSE membership, because this is a magazine that you usually get because you're a member. The subscription comes with your ASSE membership. Now, ENR, the Engineering News Record, which is the leading commercial construction publication, had a substantial following among this population. But the other trade magazines focused on construction, things like Builder and This Old House and the Journal of Light Construction, although they're very widely read in the industry, they weren't identified as a major source by construction safety professionals. On the other hand, nearly 1/5 of the respondents subscribed to the Industrial Safety and Hygiene News, better known as ISHN. This is a trade magazine aimed at occupational safety and health professionals across all different industry sectors, not just construction, but they do carry a lot of construction content. And finally, we asked them about the leading academic journals in occupational health and in construction management. Those would be the American Journal of Industrial Medicine and the Journal of Construction Engineering and Management. Neither of them were very widely subscribed by this audience. Our next question addressed websites. We gave respondents a list of websites representing different sources and different specialties and asked which they had visited within the past week. And again, we identified some key findings from these results, starting with, once again, OSHA was by far the leader. 87% of the practitioners said they visited the OSHA website for something in the previous week. NIOSH, the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, was another frequent online destination for these practitioners. 44% said they visited the NIOSH website that week. About 1 in 5 respondents said they had visited OHS Online. This is the website of Occupational Health and Safety magazine. OHS Online, like ISHN and like EHS Today and Safety and Health, is a trade magazine for occupational safety and health professionals across all sectors. It's not specific to construction, but again, publishes a lot of construction, occupational safety and health content. As for the trade magazines focused on the construction industry, we saw something similar as with their subscriptions. ENR.com was reported by 12% of the respondents, but the other titles drew very few responses. For example, www.forconstructionpros.com is the web hub for a number of construction trade titles with big followings. Public magazines like Construction Contractor, Asphalt Contractor, Equipment Today. But only 1% of the construction safety practitioners said they visited there in the past week. Finally, substantial numbers of the respondents reported visiting 2 sites hosted and published through my organization, CPWR. Those were CPWR.com and ELCOSH, the Electronic Library of Construction, Occupational Safety and Health, the latter being a database of publications and images related to construction safety and health. Since the sample was drawn from CPWR contacts, these numbers aren't directly comparable to the others, but we were glad to learn that many of you who are aware of these sources are also using them regularly. In the next question, we compared the response, or in the next step, we compared the responses by safety directors and consultants working for construction contractors with the responses of the apprenticeship instructors to see if there were any differences in their reading and web surfing habits. Now, we found for some information sources, the responses were almost identical. ENR and the OSHA Quick Takes newsletter had high penetration with both audiences and roughly equal penetration. The difference between their responses for these publications was small, and it wasn't statistically significant. On the other hand, ISHN and professional safety were very big as a source of information for the private sector safety practitioners, but did not have such a large readership with apprenticeship instructors. Following that, we turned to social media, asking respondents about the use of different social media channels. We weren't interested in people who were using social media purely for socializing and entertainment, so we specifically asked about their use of these media for construction, health, and safety information. And when we asked that question, by a large margin, LinkedIn was the most important social media channel for our respondents, at least for work-related issues. A quarter of them responded that they had recently used LinkedIn for construction safety information, compared with 12% for Facebook and just 4% for Twitter. Given the importance of LinkedIn to our intended audience, we decided to break down that response and look at it by different demographic categories. Breaking down the LinkedIn users, we found that the private sector safety professionals working for construction contractors were much more likely to use LinkedIn and visit construction-related LinkedIn groups than apprenticeship instructors at the Joint Labor Management Apprenticeship Funds were. The apprenticeship instructors For the apprenticeship instructors, 15% of them said they visited such a LinkedIn group recently, whereas it was 34% of the private sector safety professionals. And of that group, the subgroup that worked for the very largest firms was the most likely. The ENR 400 list of the largest general contractors and the ENR 600 list of largest specialty contractors in the country, we cross-referenced that to our respondents and found that 41% of the safety professionals working at these, the nation's biggest firms, had visited a construction-related LinkedIn group in the previous week. Finally, we presented this all the safety practitioners on our survey a list of 9 important sources of occupational safety and health information that had been identified by respondents in other surveys. We wanted them to identify the 3 that they thought were most important out of these 9. And both the business and the labor groups gave very similar answers to this question. The apprenticeship staff said they learned about new developments in construction safety and health from OSHA, from their union, and from construction contractors who they spoke with. The safety professionals who were working for construction contractors, the contractor safety directors and the safety consultants, said OSHA, their trade association, and other construction contractors were the 3 most important sources of information on the list. In doing the survey, we walked away with 4 very important conclusions. First of all, OSHA was the overwhelming favorite. OSHA was the single most important source of information in every format and category we tested and with every audience. Despite the bewildering number of websites and publications that are out there being presented nowadays, people wanted to go straight to the official source for information. Second, we found that construction, occupational safety, and health trade magazines were critical. The print magazines, the e-newsletter, and the websites hosted by publications such as ISHN, Occupational Health and Safety, EHS Today, and Safety and Health all have a very strong presence in this audience, particularly so in the case of the safety consultants and the safety directors at contracting firms. Among the construction-focused trade magazines, only ENR had a comparable reach among this audience. The answer would probably be different if we were dealing with an issue that was specialized to a particular trade, but as a general rule, it looked like the safety professionals across the board are more likely to subscribe to occupational safety and health-oriented titles. Third, we found that academic journals are for academics, as many of us suspected. The information in scholarly peer-reviewed, high-impact journals is important, but it generally seems to reach practitioners through intermediaries, such as their trade associations or their unions, organizations like ours, or commercial trade publications. A partial exception to this rule is professional safety, which kind of sits in the middle between an academic and a practitioner publication, because it's, on the one hand, it's peer-reviewed, as is common in academic publications. However, it's written for practitioners and directed to their problems and is delivered directly to practitioners who belong to the ASSE. And finally, LinkedIn led the social media. To the extent that respondents reported using social media to get construction safety and health information, it was LinkedIn that they mentioned. This goes a long way to explaining how some of the LinkedIn groups focused on occupational safety and health, or even specifically on construction occupational safety and health, have gathered tens of thousands of members. And having done a brief summary of my findings, I have time for questions if you have any.
Thank you, Clayton. There is one question that I received. It says, Do any of the other labor unions polled have a resource like the sheet metal workers have, like SMOHIT? If sheet metal workers were polled in this survey, how would they use SMOHIT, or how would uses like SMOHIT be plotted in the reports? Sorry, I believe that's the question.
Can you run through that one more time?
So, do any of the other labor unions polled have a resource like the sheet metal worker has, like SMOHIT? If sheet metal workers were polled in this, how would uses SMOHIT be plotted in the report?
A couple of different trades do special training or safety and health publications. In this case, the only place that question would have come up specifically is in our, as part of that last question regarding the most important sources. And the fact that for apprenticeship instructors, their labor union was one of the most important sources is probably the key to that. Because any particular trade was only a small part of the general population sample used in the survey, it'd be hard to specify any particular publication by any particular union or trade association from the group. But clearly, the safety directors are relying on publications by their trade associations if they're contractors, and by their unions if they're labor organizations.
Okay. The next question is, were frontline tradespeople part of the research pool?
Were frontline what?
Tradespeople.
That was not the audience that we were targeting here. What we did is we pulled from a list of contacts. In many cases, the apprenticeship instructors who we surveyed were people who teach OSHA outreach classes, but also still work in the field. They teach the OSHA classes at their apprenticeship funds. And in the cases of the apprenticeship staff, many of them recently were, even if they're full-time at apprenticeship staffs now, were recently working at the calling. And I imagine that there's a similar dynamic in the on the management side. But this population, we were aiming at safety and health practitioners, not rank and file workers who would be receiving the information from them.
Okay. Next question, when you asked about the social media sites, did you provide a list of the main sites, or was that an open-ended response?
We did not identify individual sites. We asked individually, have you visited a construction-oriented Facebook page in the past week? Yes or no. A LinkedIn group? Yes or no. A Twitter feed? Yes or no.
Okay. What summary may I share with the local chapter ASSE? Do you have a summary version of this?
Well, what we specifically found out about ASSE was a very high response rate among safety professionals working at construction firms. The safety directors, the safety consultants, the safety staff in the field at these firms were very likely to receive professional safety magazine, and the other sources they relied on were trade magazines in that space. And I think that's the key finding to take away for folks at ASSE if they want to communicate with the apprenticeship staff and instructors. That's ideally done more successfully through their unions, it appears, from the differential response on these questions.
And as far as sharing a summary of this information, I believe we'll be sending out a PDF of your presentation, correct?
Sure,
okay.
We can do that. It's a good idea.
All right. Next question, did your findings reveal that OSHA contacted the contractor laborer, or was it labor contractors reaching out to OSHA for answers?
Everyone who signed up for the, this was all about people reaching out to OSHA. People only get the Quick Takes newsletter if they visit the website and they opt in by giving their contact information and asking to be signed up. And the question about websites that you visit, OSHA can't make you visit a website. These are people who wanted to go look up something on the OSHA website. So it's the go-to source for people in the field with problems. Now, I'm sure OSHA promotional activity helps encourage this and helps people learn that this is the place to go. But our survey was about people who were contacting OSHA.
Okay. This is sort of a twofold question. Do you know what types of organizations subscribe to academic journals? It is discouraging to know that practitioners do not look at academic journals, although I think there's a lot of useful information put out there. And then next, any recommendations for academics who want to make an impact beyond just publishing in academic journals?
The academic journals generally go out to folks who belong to the association, the academic society that publishes them, and they go out to libraries. And we can't really entirely rule out that practitioners look at academic journals, but they are highly expensive, and they're not subscribing to them. And it may be that academics who are interested in seeing their information shared have to take the next step to work with organizations like ours that are in the business of translating materials to share with the industry, and with the kinds of publications that these professionals are using. Trade magazines that focus on construction, occupational safety, and health that are summarizing the findings. Yeah, academic journals, I think we all realize, are highly expensive, as I mentioned, densely written, and difficult to access for a person who has a full-time job doing rather than researching. And taking those findings and helping people who are trying to translate them into more user-friendly forms for practitioners is probably the best step you can take.
Okay. Through all of the research that led to this and then this survey, have you gathered a list of free and quality resources of safety information? And would you be able to share that?
There is a lot of great free information. We did not rate information sources for quality, so I'm hesitant to say anything about that. That said, The reason that the occupational health and safety trade publications have so much information on their circulation is because they are available free to people who are willing to subscribe and provide information about their professional background, their job titles and things like that, not anything confidential. So many of those publications that I mentioned in the presentation are available for subscription at no charge. ENR is one of the exceptions. It's relatively expensive, but has substantial value in the industry, and a lot of institutions subscribe to it. That's kind of all I can say about that.
And there's always CPWR. We have a ton of resources on our website, all available for free.
Absolutely, and I have a feeling lots of you know something about it, and I'd encourage you to know more. I have that feeling because I'm looking at this survey, and it's indicating that half the people on our list visited cpwr.com to access our resources in the past week, and 38% had visited ELCOSH, the Electronic Library of Construction, Occupational Safety, and Health.
Great. All right, well, I think that was the last question that I had. Did I miss anything? Do we have any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much, Clayton. And as I said before, we did record this event, so I will send out access to the recording and PDF of the slides. And as far as we just got a question about what our next webinar will be, we are still up in the air for October, but that should be decided in the next week or so, and we will have that posted on cpwr.com, and we will also have that information in our update newsletter if you receive that. All right, and thank you all for joining. Again, thank you, Clayton.
Thank you very much.